Hey everybody, welcome back. So today will be part one of a multi-part series discussing Ayanna Pressley and her job guarantee bill that she introduced back in February. Now, this has to be a multi-part series. There's just way too much information to cover, discussing the pros and cons of such an act in the United States government, a federal job guarantee. There would definitely be some pros, but there are definitely going to be some cons to this. We will be discussing that. Also, we'll have to discuss what happens to society in general. The lower working class, I guess, middle class, upper class. How does this affect jobs? How does this affect society? How does this affect the economics of a country? What are some of the long-term effects of such a bill if it were to be passed? Now, if you don't know, these kinds of things were done in the past in Central to Eastern Europe, and I believe in a few places also in South America and Eastern Asia. You know, socialist countries. They have rules like this. They have laws like this. So that will also need to be discussed at some point. And there's just no way I can cover everything in one video. It would just be way too long. So today, part one, I'm going to be talking about the actual bill. I found a copy of it on the internet. You can go and find it and read it for yourself. The link is in the description. So we will be discussing that, and I'll be talking about what it says, but also what it does not say. It's very vague. The bill never discusses exactly how everything will be implemented, nor does it talk about how it will be paid for. And I think that's the big secret that they don't want to get out. If everyone understood how this were to be paid for, no one would vote for it. At least in my opinion. Well, some people would still vote for it, but I think a lot of people would not if they really understood how this will be paid for. Who is going to pay for this if it's passed? So, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here is the original article I found, I guess about a week ago, maybe a little over a week ago, that got me motivated to do this and really started to research this information. I had heard about federal job guarantees before, but I never paid much attention to it until this. So this is the original article. We're going to go over it really quickly. It's really short. As you can see here, it was originally published February 18th of 2021, so it's a few weeks old, but it's very short. And the link will be in the description, of course. So, Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Pressley introduced a federal job guarantee resolution in the House on Thursday. The resolution states that it is up to the federal government to prevent involuntary unemployment. No, it is actually not up to the federal government to prevent any unemployment. The federal government's job is to provide you with infrastructure, roads, hospitals, education, that kind of stuff, which of course does require people to work, to build the hospitals, build the roads, etc. Of course, no big deal. But it is not the federal government's job to make sure you have a job. It is up to you to make sure that you have a job. It's called personal responsibility. Now, I know that personal responsibility is something a lot of people just don't want to talk about, but sorry, tough shit. Personal responsibility. You want jobs? Go get them. You want a certain job? Go get the education for it. Go get the training for it. No one's just going to hand you a job just because you showed up. It doesn't work that way. Anyways, Presley says, it's time to establish a legal right to a job for all people in America. For years, we have legislated hate, harm, and injustice in this country. It's long past time to pursue bold, intentional policies that affirm equity and recognize the dignity and humanity of all people. A federal job guarantee is an important investment in the American people, our communities, and an equitable economy that works for all. Stay tuned for the whole series, and I'll show you exactly how this does not work for all. Alright? We have enough evidence from the past, from history, of countries that had these kinds of programs that prove when these laws are enacted, they don't work for all. They only work for a few. And I'll show you. The resolution comes as millions of Americans have lost their jobs because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that's just garbage. They have not lost their jobs because of the pandemic. A lot of people are still working through the pandemic. A lot of people could still work through the pandemic. They lost their jobs because the government closed everything. Let's put the blame where it's supposed to be, okay? We don't want to blame some invisible boogeyman, oh, COVID-19, when the blame rests squarely somewhere else. I hate it when people do this. When you try to put the blame on someone else, try to find some scapegoat to say, look, that's the reason why everything is bad, this or that. That's why everything's so screwed up. Certain societies and governments have done this in the past. Take a look at the 20th century and you'll find every terrible government that ever existed in the 20th century did this exact same thing. We're not the ones causing the problems. It's those people over there. Boogeyman, wooga booga. COVID, oh, so scary. That's all it is. It's fear-mongering. National Socialists did it, fascists did it, communists did it, socialists still do it. It's just fear-mongering. Don't buy it. Anyways, let's go to her actual government website where she shows the entire bill. Right here. So here is Pressley.house.gov. This is her actual website on the House of Representatives.gov website. This is her page. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, honored to serve Massachusetts 7th District. That's Boston, by the way. So here it is. This is it. Federal Job Guarantee Resolution, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, MA 07, Massachusetts 7th District. So we're going to do it, the whole thing. It's about 3 pages, so go grab a drink. Today, we recommit to building a nation where every person can work, live, and thrive with dignity. The idea that all people should have a right to employment that ensures a dignified standard of living has deep roots in American history and remains an unfulfilled demand of the civil rights movement. Amidst the unprecedented pandemic, well, that's not true. It's not. Have you not looked into 1918? Do you not have a history book? The employment crisis and resounding demand for a more equitable economy. Once again, that word equitable and not equality. The need to affirm the right to meaningful, dignified work and a livable wage has never been clearer. The right to a useful and remunerative job was the first and most fundamental right in President Franklin D. Roosevelt's proposed Economic Bill of Rights. Yeah, go look up Franklin D. Roosevelt and his Economic Bill of Rights. It's pretty left-leaning socialist. Borderline. Sadie Alexander, the nation's first black economist, advocated a job guarantee to address racial discrimination against black workers while improving labor market conditions for all workers. Well, if you're only hiring blacks, then how does it improve conditions for all? If certain people have to lose jobs in order to hire blacks, doesn't sound like it's helping all. But I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Martin Luther King Jr. called for guaranteed jobs, and Coretta Scott King led a grassroots movement in support of a federal job guarantee. Now, as much as I do support and really appreciate what Dr. King did and Coretta Scott King also did, they were not economists. So I don't think we should trust their judgment on the economy. Sorry. All respect to Dr. King and Coretta Scott. All respect. But they're not economists. So, federal job guarantee. A federal job guarantee would provide every person with an enforceable legal right to a quality job on projects that meet long neglected community, physical, and human infrastructure needs, such as delivering quality care for children and seniors, building and sustaining 21st century transit systems, strengthening neighborhoods, and protecting the environment. Funded by the federal government and implemented locally in partnership with communities, the program would provide public jobs for all adults seeking employment. Yeah, because I really want my child care to be taken care of by any Joe shit the ragman that shows up looking for a job. I really don't want my, grandmother being taken care of by some guy that just got out of federal prison for murder or rape. Sorry, call me crazy, but no thanks. And as far as building and sustaining 21st century transit systems, that's something Donald Trump talked about doing. Rebuilding the bridges, rebuilding the roads, rebuilding the airports. That was literally what he advocated for 4 straight years. Strengthening neighborhoods. Trump talked about that. Trying to bring back to the communities. Protecting the environment. Okay, great. Cool. Let's do that. Let's protect the environment. What needs to be protected? Sure. Do it. But what I don't like is this right here. An enforceable legal right to a quality job. That phrase right there kind of sticks out to me. Enforceable. Who's going to enforce it? The government? The police? They're going to show up and make you, a business owner, hire someone? Or force someone who's in charge of, the transit system in your local city to hire people. Like, look, this guy just got out of prison for murder. He needs a job. You're going to hire him. Well, what if I don't want to hire a murderer? Tough shit. You're giving him a job. A quality job. Who decides if a job is quality or not? How are we going to measure this? Quality. Quality doesn't help. Good quality, bad quality, piss poor quality? There are different variations of the word quality. Really need to add some detail here, Miss Pressley. By ensuring everyone has access to a good job with dignified wages, safe working conditions, health care, and other benefits, including full worker rights and union protections, of course. A federal job guarantee would address the current jobs crisis while laying the foundation for an equitable economic recovery. It would create a pathway to stable employment and begin to close the gaping income gap for Black, Latinx, and Indigenous workers who continue to face discrimination and are often the first ones fired, last ones hired during economic crises. Well, then you probably should have voted for Donald Trump in 2020 because there were more blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous and women in the job market than ever before. So this gaping income gap was literally being closed over the past 4 years. But hey, it wasn't being closed by the federal government, so that's the problem. We gotta make sure the federal government's in charge of closing the income gap. Well, if you want the federal government in charge of anything other than paving a damn road, you got problems. Because I'll tell you what, I don't know where you come from, but where I come from in the States, I've seen some piss poor roads that are supposed to be being paved by the government. They can't even pave the roads correctly. You sure you want them in charge of your job? I know I don't. No thanks. I'm good. But let's continue. Here we are. It would also ensure economic inclusion for those experiencing discrimination in the labor market, including people with disabilities, transgender people, caregivers. Caregivers are being discriminated against? That doesn't make sense. And people with criminal records or involvement with the criminal legal system. And it would enable the just transition of workers in unsustainable sectors. Okay, let's break those two sentences down because there's a lot to really take apart and to disassemble. So, people with disabilities. Now, the jobs that we just looked at that are being described are jobs of building infrastructure, childcare, senior care, strengthening neighborhoods, and protecting the environment. People with disabilities, which of those jobs are they going to be suited for? I'm not trying to be offensive, but I'm just being honest. If someone is legally blind, I don't want them taking care of my kids. No offense. I don't want them trying to build a road. If you're legally blind or legally deaf, I don't want you in the way and getting in trouble or getting hurt or killed because you didn't see something or you didn't hear something. Sounds like a bad idea. Transgender people. No offense, but some people are not going to want a transgender individual as a caregiver, okay? This is just something that's going to have to be talked about, whether you like it or not. There are going to be people out there that do not want a transgender individual around their kids. You are going to be putting people in really difficult situations where someone might get hurt. And it'll be legally enforced. People with criminal records, involvement with the criminal legal system. That literally means a person who is incarcerated right now. That's what it means to be involved with the criminal legal system. You're in prison. So in other words, they're going to take people who are incarcerated to go to work for whatever the case may be, whatever needs to be done in their local community. Okay? No offense, I'm sure there are some people in the prison system that messed up. They are looking for a new start. Great, absolutely wonderful. Let's get those people back to work. I've got no problem with that. But at the same time, there are also some absolutely psychotic individuals that are locked up in prisons, and you're going to hook them up with a job release program. Yeah, go work on the roads. Go do some child care. Go do some senior home care. Oh boy, I'm sure that won't end badly. Just saying. But let's keep going. At a time when 28% of full-time workers earn less than $15 per hour. That's because we have a lot of waiters and waitresses that do not legally earn $15 an hour. But after including tips at most restaurants, they do earn a good salary. If they didn't, they wouldn't work it. How do I know? I've worked in restaurants. Been there, done that. Okay? So, a job guarantee would set a new standard for quality jobs. Once again, quality. What quality? Good quality? Bad quality? You tell me. Pressuring low-wage employers to increase wages and benefits. Here's the good part. By hiring workers in the midst of a downturn, a permanent job guarantee would operate as an automatic stabilizer, maintaining consumer spending and protecting us from prolonged recessions and jobless recoveries, making the economy more resilient as well as more inclusive. No. No, it doesn't. And here's why. This sentence. Pressuring low-wage employers to increase wages and benefits. If you've never run your own business, if you've never been a business manager, or you never have owned your own business, you might not quite understand what this means. You might not understand what the repercussions are. When they say low-wage employers, they mean all employers. Large, massive multinational companies like Amazon and your local mom and pop shop. Now, mom and pop, they can't afford to increase wages to $15 an hour. They can't afford to give you extra benefits. Okay? They just can't. A lot of small business owners go home with very little overall profit once they've paid their employers, paid any benefits packages, paid for their bills, the rent for their property, etc., etc., etc. They go home with very little in the end. Most of them. So if they are forced to compete with the federal government for jobs, as far as wages and benefits goes, they can't. They can't afford it. They don't have an endless treasury department to just funnel money to make sure they can pay everyone. So what happens? Your middle class withers away and dies. All small business slowly disappears. You, the worker, now have two choices. You can either work for Uncle Sam or for some gigantic multinational that doesn't even know your name, which is basically the same for either the government or the multinational. They don't know who you are. They don't care about who you are. You're just a number and a name on a list. That's how it works. There will be no more mom and pop shops, no more mom and pop restaurants. They won't be able to afford it because they'll have to keep up with the demand from the endless money of the federal government and companies like Amazon, Google, etc. They can't do it. They go bankrupt and you're stuck. You, Mr. High School student looking for a job, you got two options. You go work for the big multinational that hates your guts and is just going to exploit you, or you go work for the federal government that hates your guts and is just going to exploit you. Great job. But hey, whatevs, bro. You do you. You live your life. I'll live mine. All right? A federal job guarantee is a long overdue policy that will help us reach the true full employment, increase economic security, and reduce racial and gender inequities. Once again, you should have voted for Donald Trump because he helped with all of those. It prevents the many social and economic costs of unemployment and invests in people, our communities, and the planet. And it is the most powerful reform we can implement to create an equitable, resilient, and sustainable economy that delivers prosperity to all. But it doesn't deliver prosperity to all. If you've never worked for the federal government, let me explain to you how it works. And by the way, yes, I worked for the federal government for about 4.5 years. You're going to get on your paycheck. You're told when you get the job, oh, you're going to make this much money every month. You're like, oh man, that sounds pretty good. Benefits packages, oh, cool. Then you get your paycheck. And I promise you, because it's the federal government, they're very bureaucratic, every single deduction will be itemized line by line by line. You'll see it. And that paycheck that sounded really cool when you first started, it's going to look mighty dang pathetic. Because they're going to take from your salary that $15 an hour. Woo! Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it's not going to be $15 an hour once you get your taxes. Or once your taxes have been deducted and all your benefits have been paid for, because they're like, oh, well, you get free meal packages. Meals are included. And you find out your meal was included because they took it out of your paycheck. Oh, no, your uniform's going to be paid for. Yeah, by you. It's deducted from your paycheck, moron. Oops. That's how it works. You think you're making $15 an hour. Once all the deductions have been removed, you've actually only made about $9 an hour. You're back to where you were. It's fantastic. You gotta love it when the government controls your job and your entire life at that point. When they control your job, they control your taxes, they control where you live, you are literally a puppet of the government. Here we get to the job guarantee projects. So, job guarantee projects would strengthen communities and retool our economy to achieve inclusive prosperity and leave no one behind. How are you going to do that, Ayanna? You're going to force people to go to work? You're going to find all the homeless people, round them up, put them in the back of a truck, and drive them to the job site? And say, get to work or go to prison? What are you going to do? How are you going to leave no one behind? You should set off alarm bells. Some people will always be left behind because they want to be left behind. They don't want to live in your system. They don't want to have your job that you're going to give them. Personally, I've been through Arizona. I've been in Southern California. I've been in Texas, all over the Southeast. The one thing I do not want to do is do road construction in the middle of July or August down in the Southeast or Texas or something. Good God, to hell with that. I'd rather be homeless than that sometimes, I think. No thanks. Ugh, Jesus. In Florida, they have to do all the road construction at night during the summertime because it's too damn hot during the daytime. But hey, you got to make sure no one's left behind, so round them up and put them all to work, right? Projects would address national priorities as well as those put forward by local governments and community organizations, with the participation of communities impacted by structural racism, where oppression and disinvestment in the selection of projects, because some projects are more important than others. Sorry, basket weaving is not as important as building a bridge or upgrading an old bridge, or maintaining your highway. Just a fact. Projects would help to address systemic inequities that the federal government helped to create through racist policies such as redlining, urban renewal, and segregation. We haven't had segregation in, good God, 60 years. I don't think Ayanna Pressley was even alive when there was segregation. Jesus. Urban renewal? What's wrong with urban renewal? That sounds nice. Urban, meaning the local cities, the inner cities. Renewal, making them new. Sounds nice. Maybe I'm missing something. If you know something I don't, leave me a comment, because urban renewal sounds like a good idea to me. Here we have examples of job guarantee projects. This includes ensuring the delivery of high-quality professional care to children, seniors, and others in need of long-term support in family-based informal and formal settings. How? Who are you going to hire to take care of kids and seniors? Please tell me. I would like to know. I don't want Joe Shit the Ragman, some homeless dude, heroin addict, taking care of my kids or my grandparents. No thanks. Next, augmenting the staffing of public education and early childhood learning, including Head Start and preschool. Okay, I'm all good. I'm totally okay with helping public education, making it better, making sure that the teachers are of quality, of high quality. I don't want a bunch of lazy people on tenure that can get away with doing whatever they want, filling up our public schools. So if you can train good teachers, great. Sounds good. But I have my own issues with, this idea of government-funded public education. That'll be a later video, though. Big problems with that. Next, strengthening public after-school programs, libraries, and recreational programs to provide lifelong learning and enrichment for people of all ages. And see, that's the only good thing I've heard so far. That sounds fantastic. After-school programs, get kids off the streets, go play basketball, go play football, go read a book. Hell yeah. Fantastic. Great job. How about we just fund this one sentence? Can you just pull up a bill that just funds this? I think that would be fantastic. Whatever. Next, implementing community infrastructure and improvement projects that revitalize neighborhoods and increase accessibility, including vacant and abandoned property cleanup, street and sidewalk repair, remodeling and modernization of schools and other public community serving facilities, and maintenance and renovation of parks, playgrounds, and public spaces. Now, this sounds fantastic, but the problem I have with this, what she is describing in this sentence, tends to exist in mostly urban areas and Democrat-controlled areas. Need I remind you of modern-day Detroit and Baltimore? Lots of vacant and abandoned property, streets and sidewalks needing repair, remodeling and modernization of schools and other public community facilities, renovation of parks and playgrounds. That's inner city stuff. What's the problem with that, you ask? Bohemian, you have a problem with that? No, I don't have a problem with that. That sounds like a great idea. The problem I have is people have been voting for people, citizens have been voting for politicians stating these exact same types of sentences for 40 or 50 years in some cases. Like in Detroit, Baltimore, Chicago, the same people keep getting elected because they make these exact same promises and they never keep them. So why should I trust Ayanna Pressley or anyone else from the Democrat Party to keep this promise? We're going to spend all this money to rebuild your parks. And how long until they're back to being a slum shithole filled with drug dealers again and violence? How long? 2 weeks? 2 months? What? Tell me. You're going to build it up, let it go back to shit, you're going to abandon it, let it go back to being a shithole again. That way you can pay people again to come back in and remodel it again. It's a never-ending money scheme. Someone's making money off of it. Guarantee you that's what's going to happen. Next, expanding emergency preparedness and relief and recovery from natural and community disasters, including public health, natural disasters, and environmental emergencies. Pretty sure that's what the National Guard is for. Don't they do that? Don't they show up to natural disasters and stuff like that? I don't know. Next, producing works of public art and documentation of American history akin to the WPA's Federal Arts Project. Why in the hell should we be funding this when it's supposed to be all about jobs? How many jobs is that going to create? 2, 3 in a community? 3 people to build a sculpture or a statue somewhere that looks like crap in front of your local modern art museum? No thanks. I've seen enough of that. Next, implementing environmental conservation, remediation, and sustainability initiatives, and increasing the energy efficiency of buildings and our housing stock to address climate change. Okay? Could you be more specific? I would prefer some specificity here in this sentence. Sustainability initiatives. Like what? Tell me what you mean. Don't just give me some bland little sentence that has no meat to it. Okay? How are you going to increase energy efficiency? With what? Are you going to buy a whole lot of solar panels? You're going to pay people to install solar panels? Okay, that sounds fine with me, but I would like some more detail on this sentence. Next, rehabilitating and retrofitting our existing affordable housing stock to ensure safe, affordable, accessible, quality homes and supporting the development of new affordable housing and social housing to address the nation's housing crisis. Okay. We have programs for that already. I don't know if she knows this, but there are already programs that build homes for the homeless. Maybe we could just donate money to these programs instead of increasing our taxes, because that's exactly what's going to happen. A job program is going to require taxes going up to make sure the federal government can pay all these employees and their benefits. Just saying. Next, other projects that address public needs and can be implemented quickly. Like what? I hate these kinds of sentences. Give me some detail. Tell me what you mean. Public needs. Like what? What public needs? You need to be specific. I don't like this kind of crap in a government bill. I understand some people don't want to be specific, but typically, if it's a government that's not being specific, telling you how and why they're doing something, you need to be careful. Projects would create net new jobs and would not displace existing public sector workers. And racial equity and environmental sustainability would be key criteria for project selection. So, only the most expensive, environmentally sustainable concepts and material will be used, and non-whites will be going to the front of the line. Okay, cool. Cool story, bro. So now we get to the compensation and benefits. Here we go. Wages for job guarantee employment would be no less than $15 per hour and adjusted on a regular basis to ensure a rising standard of living. Benefits would include health insurance consistent with that provided to existing federal government employees, paid sick days, paid family medical leave, retirement benefits, and vacation. Workers would be protected against discrimination and harassment by federal labor laws and would be able to join public sector unions and bargain collectively for better working conditions and compensation. Workers' data would be protected and their privacy respected from the federal government. And any creative, scientific, artistic, or cultural works produced by workers would be made open and available for public use. Oh, so if you want to create a patent while you're working under this program, too bad, the government owns it. All adult residents age 18 and over would be eligible for employment, including those with involvement in the criminal legal system. Yes. Young people ages 16 and 17 would be eligible for part-time employment. Jobs would be accessible to people with disabilities. Outreach and recruitment would be conducted in multiple languages and accessible formats. Jobs would be full-time or part-time and short or long-term, depending on worker needs. Workers would build lasting skills through on-the-job training, as well as paid apprenticeships, credentialing, and other career-building opportunities. They would also receive supportive services such as childcare and transportation assistance, access to information about reasonable accommodations and specific accommodations as needed to access jobs and fulfill job responsibilities. The federal job guarantee would meaningfully expand our social safety net and would not replace any existing safety net programs or benefits, including unemployment insurance. Well, yes, it would. It would have to replace unemployment insurance because if you're unemployed, you're going to be forced to go work. They said it. This will be legally enforced. You will have to go and work. There will be no more unemployment insurance unless you are completely disabled and unable to work. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. How is this getting paid for? If the government's just going to jack up the wages, $15 an hour, across the board, with all the benefits, health insurance, sick days, etc., how does this get paid for? Well, obviously by taxes. It's the only way the government has money, either by printing a whole shitload of money or raising your taxes, or both. That's called inflation, children. Look up the Weimar Republic if you want a good lesson on what happens with that. Job programs with high minimum wages and massive printing of currency. Who was it that got elected because of these policies? Oops. This stuff's a bad idea. Your taxes are going to go up big time if a program like this is ever passed. And here's the part that I have to talk about. It kind of bothers me. Workers would build lasting skills through on-the-job training, paid apprenticeships, credentialing, and other career-building opportunities. The problem is, as I already stated, the middle class would basically be getting the short end of the stick. Small businesses would have to close because they're not going to be able to really afford full-time employment of at least $15 an hour plus benefits. Most small businesses will not be able to afford it. Those that can afford it will not be able to hire a large staff of employees. Okay? So all these apprenticeships and credentialing, career building opportunities, career building in the government. That's the only place that you'll be able to work. In the government, or maybe, if you're lucky, you can move over, leave the government job, and get a job at some large company doing business with them. But your small business is probably not going to last very long. You get credentialed as, I don't know, a plumber, an electrician, whatever, because you worked for the government to build houses for many years. You get all these credentials, you did the apprenticeships, great. You got all the skills. So you go and try and start your own business. Good luck with that. You won't be able to afford to hire anyone to help you. You will be your boss and your only employee because you won't be able to afford any other employees because you'll have to pay at least $15 an hour plus full benefits. Why would anyone work for you for the same dollar amount but less benefits when they can go and work for the federal government doing the exact same job for the same amount of money plus benefits? The entire middle class, small businesses, they'll all be destroyed. It's that simple. So here's the last paragraph: program administration and financing. Oh boy. The program would be administered by the Department of Labor and overseen by the Secretary of Labor in coordination with the Treasury Secretary, who would be responsible for dispersing funding. Of course, comes straight from the Treasury. Never-ending supply of money. The Secretary of Labor would direct Treasury funds to local employment offices to manage job guarantee projects and match job seekers to projects, as well as cover any related capital and administrative costs. State, county, and local governments, as well as tribal nations, would help administer the program, engaging residents in community assessments and participatory processes to identify job guarantee projects to go into a community job bank. Lord, that's a long sentence. One hell of a run-on sentence. You should get some people to help you with these. Given the current unemployment crisis, it is critical to swiftly launch and expand this program to all communities so that individuals can begin to work when it is safe to do so. During the initial startup period, the Labor Secretary will target funds to areas of greatest employment need. The program should be fully functional within 3 years of its initiation. This would be a permanent program for which the Treasury would provide the necessary funds as permanent, non-discretionary spending. All right, we're done with this article. Woo! So, one more little piece of information that I want to explain to people listening. I know some people that used to work in the Florida Department of Transportation. And what they told me, the way it works, anytime you have these kinds of government-funded projects and programs, every year when the state is getting ready to do its budget, the head of the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation would show up to the meeting and say, okay, look, last year we spent $300 million. This year we've got a few more projects we want to do, and we want to spend $340 million. We need that much money. And so the legislature says, okay, we're going to hook you up with $340 million. Bam. Or whoever it is that's in charge of it. I don't know off the top of my head. They hook them up with $340 million to spend for that fiscal year. Well, what if they don't spend all $340 million? Well, the rest of that money, let's say they only spend $320 million. So they have $20 million left over. They have to give that back to the state government. which means the state government will say, look, we gave you this much money last year. We gave you 340, but you only needed 320. We're not giving you that much money this year. Sorry, we're only going to give you 300 again. Sorry, you're not getting 340. You didn't spend it. It forces the people in charge to find ways of spending the money to make sure they can get more money the following year. It's how they give themselves bonuses. They give themselves pay raises. They find ways of spending that money. Your money, your taxes. It gets siphoned off, goes to someone's back pocket, and everyone's none the wiser. Actually, sorry, everyone does know. They all know what's going on. But no one talks about it. No one wants to talk about it. This is why, if you've ever noticed, you'll see a road that got fixed, quote, fixed one year, and the very next year you see the same road construction team out there on the same exact spot, quote, fixing it again. Huh. That's why they have to spend the money. They have to. And that's exactly what's going to happen here with this kind of a program. The money will have to be spent. They'll find ways of spending it, like giving themselves extra benefits, giving themselves extra pay. Whereas the people at the very bottom, the lowest workers, are still getting screwed over. Their taxes are going up because they have to pay for it. It's a scam. Your taxes go up to pay for the people at the top to give themselves extra benefits and bonuses at the end of the year. All right, so that has been part 1. Stay tuned for the rest of this series. In the next episode, I will be going over the opinions of professional economists. So it's not just my opinion. I will be going over articles written by professional economists, both from the more fiscally conservative side of the argument and the more left-leaning Keynesian side of the argument. We will also be discussing what happened to certain countries that enacted these kinds of laws in their past, how it changed society, how it changed work life and family life. In case you don't know, one of the reasons why I have my name Bohemian is because I live in Bohemia. I live in the modern-day Czech Republic, which used to be called Czechoslovakia, which was ruled by a communist party. They call themselves communist, but they weren't communists. They were socialists. They never reached communism, obviously. They were very heavy-handed, hardcore socialists, and they did have a job, quote, guarantee program. It was more of a job, you better be working program. So I will be going over that, and I will be relaying to you stories that were told to me firsthand by people that grew up in the 1970s and 80s under that regime, under these kinds of laws, and how strict it was, and some of the punishments and penalties and things like that took place just literally 30, 40 years ago. We're talking, someone who's in their middle age at this point that grew up under these conditions. People who are retired now lived and worked under these conditions. And I've met plenty of people who lived back in the 70s and 80s, who worked back in the 70s and 80s, that have told me stories of how things happened, what happened, and how the government ran these kinds of programs, and what happened to people during those time periods in Czechoslovakia. So stay tuned for the full series. You're going to get a lot of information about this, pros and cons, positives and negatives, mostly negatives, to be quite honest, at least from the stories and everything that I've found. So, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I remain the Neo-Bohemian.